Guys, today's the day. It's finally time we add more power to the Turbo R. It's stock at 172 horsepower. It's a great looking machine, but power it has been lacking. I can't get my ass whooped anymore on the dry lake bed. So we're doing a big change today. So a lot of bolt-on upgrades, but no changing to the actual tuning of the engine. And that's a big deal. You can add a bigger exhaust, you can add all sorts of changes to your intake, but if you don't have the correct fueling, you're not really gonna gain that much power. So after months of contemplating, I finally settled on the X85 Stage 5 tune for the single Turbo R. So this is the biggest tune they make for the 17 through 19 Turbo R, Can-Am X3. After that, you have to upgrade the turbo to get more power. But this is gonna be enough. 235 horsepower is what it's rated at. And I think that's a pretty big jump. 60 horsepower from the original 172 should be a major change. And for the open desert, which is the most, for the most part what I run and where I go, that's plenty of horsepower. Horsepower in the whip section is not needed as much as in Glamis. Now in Glamis, it's a whole different story. A big turbo would be awesome, but I can't afford that, so we're gonna stick with this for the time being. So Evolution Power Sports mainly focuses on Polaris and Can-Am products, but they do offer a big wide variety of tunes for those vehicles, including the Razor Turbo XP, the Turbo S, the Pro XP, and of course the Can-Am models from start to finish, 2017 through 2021. Now with the 2021 model, it all depends on when your 2021 Can-Am X3 was built. I will leave a link in the description so you guys can figure that out for yourselves. It has to do with the production date on the vehicle. If it was built prior to November of 2020, then you might still be good and you can flash the X3. For the other models that have been built after November 2020, you're gonna have to wait as they're still developing the tunes, but they will crack it. They're currently the only manufacturer that makes tunes for the 2021 models pre-November. So for my personal X3, mine's 2018, they've cracked that a long time ago and they make power like crazy. Not only do they offer tunes like these, they offer big turbo kits. They have a dynamite kit that can put you up to 310 horsepower, or a Desert Storm kit, which is pretty much endless. I mean, I'm talking about 500 horsepower out of a sub 1 liter engine, which is freaking insane. More power, baby! So the steps we're going to be doing today is going to be 4 main steps. Number 1 is you're going to get the calibration files onto your Map Tuner X, and then flash the Map Tuner X file onto the Can-Am X3. But this is actually an option. You can option to purchase that and do it that way, or you could take off your ECU, which is located behind the driver's seat or second row driver's seat if you have a 4-seat, and you can send that to Evolution Power Sports. They will do the tune and they'll send it back to you. The second step is going to be replacing the wastegate. This is Evolution Power Sports supplied wastegate. It's a requirement if you're going to run E85. We will replace that and set the crack pressure. Step 3 is going to require you to gap your spark plugs. Now I bought some new ones. You don't have to buy new ones if you have a low mileage. Just reuse the ones you have, but you have to gap them.
Fast as fuck, boys.
And the last step is the fuel system. We're gonna have to replace our injectors with these big injectors because E85 requires more fuel, and we're gonna have to drain out all the old fuel that we have in the tank and replace it with new fresh E85. So I will be leaving a link on the instructions on how to set this up, but it's pretty simple. The first thing you're gonna do is hook up the diagnostic port cable onto the Map Tuner, hook it up to your car, turn the ignition on with the engine off. You're pretty much gonna add your vehicle to the tuner. Once you do that, you can unplug this cable. Then you're gonna download the software for the Map Tuner X. Using the USB cable, you hook it up to the Windows computer. You download the software. They do give you a link in the packaging. You contact Evo, they give you a code. You enter your email and code onto the Map Tuner X software, sync everything up. They give you the calibration files, and then you'll pretty much be done. Also, you might wanna check for updates while you're there. Then you can pretty much unplug it. Plug your diagnostic port cable back into here and on the X3 and flash your ECU, and you'll be ready to go on that side of things. So I already have the file on here. So the first thing we're gonna do, it doesn't really matter the orientation. Don't start the car after you put this on, but we're gonna go ahead and reflash the ECU with our Map Tuner X. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now I'm well aware that this is probably the last step that you probably want to do and not the first step, but I can't wait. So
getting excited.
On this X3, it's located underneath the glove box here. We're gonna plug in the tuner to the diagnostic port, which is right there, and we'll start flashing. The key's already in there. I just have to turn the ignition on. She's all plugged in, the ignition is on. We're gonna go to programming, and it's gonna read the information off the X3. Let's see here. We're gonna choose our tune, which is gonna be the X85 tune. We're gonna press next. Updates, requirements, which is cool here. They do give you the requirements. 2018 fuel pump, which obviously came with aftermarket exhaust. I have a full exhaust. E85 fuel injectors they provided in the kit. Wastegate they provided in the kit. And besides the requirements, they do have some recommendations here. Revised intercooler fan, rev limits. It's just some changes, but we'll deal with that later because the clutching we're going to do in another video. It says, do you wish to program the vehicle? I'm going to say yes. Make sure the key's in the on position. It is. So one of the main things when programming anything is make sure you have proper voltage. I trickle charged this overnight so I don't have issues, and it's 12.4 volts, which is perfect. So with that programming, I did get as much fuel out as I could already. The only thing left in there is probably at the very bottom, and what we're gonna do is scavenge that out with the fuel pump, and by taking off the fuel line, since we're gonna take it off anyways to do the injectors, and we'll probably turn the key on and off a couple times and get the fuel out that way. But for the majority of the fuel, and by the way, this had a full tank. I did get it out using this method. It works freaking great. You can find these at Harbor Freight or Amazon, like I bought mine, and I filled up about 2.5 of these, and I pretty much put it in the truck. Some tools are going to make your life a lot easier, are pretty much required. This is going to help you take most of the fuel out without having to take the actual pump out. You're going to need a mighty vac to set the crack pressure, and obviously you're going to need a T30 to get some screws off, 10 millimeters, and all your generic stuff, maybe some pliers. So it's not that hard. There's not a lot of tools involved and not a lot of stuff you got to remove or change out, but there is some stuff required. Wastegate's going to be easy to replace, and so are the injectors, but we'll get to that in just a second. So it looks like it's done. We'll turn off the ignition, unplug this, and replace the injectors next. Oh man. So as you can see, it still has a lot of gas in it. What we could do is feed this into a tank, turn the key on and off a couple times, and get the fuel to come out. And that's what I'm gonna do right now. So how you guys get this fuel line off is there are tabs at the top and the bottom that lock onto the fuel rail. You actually want to squeeze the sides until those tabs move up, and then you can pull off that line. So pretty easy, not a big deal. So we'll set this guy up here. We're gonna turn the key on off a couple times, see how much fuel we get. So you put the key in, you turn the ignition on with a small quick press, and that will turn the fuel pump on for at least 5 seconds. You do that a couple times to scavenge out any fuel that's left over in the tank. Now as you can see, that would be a pain in the butt to keep doing that over and over again. So the majority of the fuel, you're gonna wanna use that hose in order to get most of the gas out. So it took about 10 ignition cycles to get the rest of the fuel out. I could hear the pump gurgling, so just pay attention to that noise. Another thing we probably could have done, I'm sure there's a fuel pump relay we could have just left on, but I didn't want to take other stuff apart. So it was actually really easy, not that hard to do. And we'll move on to replacing the injectors. So for the injectors, you're going to want to remove the whole fuel rail. There's 2 Torx screwing everything down. Once you get those screws out, you should be able to wiggle the fuel rail out with the injectors. So I did wiggle the fuel rail out. And then with the fuel rail up and out of the way, I was able to gain access to the springs that retain the connectors on. And there's 3 of them, obviously, 3-cylinder motor, and we got those off. So now you're left with this guy, and we're gonna swap these injectors out. So it's always a good idea to pressure wash the top of the motor and let everything dry out, so you don't let any dirt into the intake or into the fuel rail cavities, but I should have mentioned that. So now that you have your fuel rail, it's pretty simple. All you gotta do is push the clips back, as you can see here, and pull the injector out. So now you get your new injectors that were in the kit. You put a little tiny miniature dab of grease just so they can slide in. You don't gotta put a bunch of it. You don't want to put a bunch of it. If you put a big gob, it's gonna get stuck in the fuel system and possibly plug up your injector, so you don't want to do that. So literally the lightest of light coats that you can put on there. So make sure you reinstall your clips. There is a piece on the body of the injector that the clip actually goes through, so make sure you're installing it correctly. We don't want your $30,000 X3 to go down in flames, so
everything burns.
Go ahead and reinstall. All right, double check the connectors are in, screws are tight, and now we're gonna install the fuel line back onto the fuel rail. So it should pop into place. And once it locks into place, Give it a couple wiggles, make sure it's nice and tight. You don't want this popping off. It looks like it's good. And we're gonna move on to the wastegate. All right guys, so we're gonna replace this wastegate actuator. First thing you're gonna wanna do is take this clip off and make sure you don't drop it. Put that in a safe spot, and you're gonna wanna take this lever off. You can pry in between carefully. Next, take off the hose that goes on the wastegate actuator. Pull that off. And you can take off the 210s that hold the actuator in place. Install the new one in the same orientation. You're gonna wanna put the new nuts that they give you attached to the wastegate solenoid. All right guys, I'm gonna install the rod onto the lever of the wastegate. I'm not gonna install the line yet. We're gonna use our Mighty Vac. We'll put that on right there. And we need to adjust the, there's an adjustment to this rod, and you wanna adjust the rod to the point where the lever on the wastegate only moves, or as soon as it moves, when it hits 11 psi. So this is all going to depend on your tune. This is a stage 5, so we're doing 11 psi per Evo's requirements. We're going to go ahead and keep an eye on this lever. As soon as it moves, we will stop applying pressure. Right there. And it's set to, I want to say 9.5, because I kind of give it a little bit more than I should have. 9.5. So what you'll do is I need to take this rod off, and then we'll let go of the pressure here. And I believe we're gonna need to move it inwards a little bit. We'll probably just do a full turn, and then we'll pull it back on there and put it back on the lever. We'll try this again. Keep an eye on the gauge, keep an eye on the lever. There, it moved, and it's right under 11, and I think that's perfect. So now that we set that up, what we're gonna do is we're gonna tighten up this jam nut. You can also tighten it down without it being on the wastegate lever, and then just double check your pressure, make sure it's good. So we'll put that back on just to double check and verify. And yep, it's at 11. Perfect, right where we want it. All right guys, I had to replace this clamp because it was just under too tight. So we're gonna go ahead and put a regular worm gear style clamp. It's tight. We'll reinstall the clip. It goes right here. So that's that. Now we can remove the spark plugs and set the gap. So in order to do that, the easiest way to do it is to actually remove the intercooler and do it from the top. So I'm gonna take off the charge tubes. You guys have seen me do that 100 times. And as far as the intercooler, it's really simple. After you take the charge tubes off and disconnect the fan, there's 210s on the front and on the back. All you gotta do is remove that cover, take the 410s off, and pull that sucker out. All right guys, we got the intercooler off. Now we can remove all 3 coils, pull our spark plugs off, and we're gonna gap them. This process is really simple. You're gonna remove the connector. You're gonna take your coil off, which is this guy here, and then we're gonna take off the spark plug. And I'll show you guys that process on the second one. You wanna make sure you don't lose the hardware. We're gonna have to manhandle this coil and get her out of there. So there's that. Then you can get your 9/16 or 14mm spark plug socket. And because I don't have a spark plug socket, I'm gonna use a magnet to get this guy out. All right, as you guys can see, this had an exaggerated amount of grease or anti-seize, kind of a lot. A little bit was on the tip here, which is not good, but no big deal. We could clean that off and we could reuse these spark plugs, but because I'm already in here and I already have, you know, enough miles to warrant this, we're gonna replace these spark plugs. Before we install these though, we are gonna apply a small dab of anti-seize. Not as much as this one had, but just a small dab. And before that, we actually got to set the gap. So the tune requires a gap of the spark plug to be between 16 and 18 thousandths, or 0.016 or 0.018. I set them to 0.017, right in between. You know, if it's off a little bit, it's not gonna matter. So as you can see on these, and real quick, this is iridium tipped, so you gotta be very careful. Do not jam them in there. If it doesn't slide in, it doesn't slide in. It barely slides in. I can slide it back out, so I know they're set correctly. But just be very careful. This iridium tip, you could damage the coating, which is gonna drastically lower the life of the spark plug, so could even cause a misfire. So the way I set the gap on these, there's a tool you can purchase. I'll leave a link down below. So what this tool does is you could twist this and it'll push on the spark plug and lessen the gap. So just do it very slowly, be very careful. I'll leave a link to this tool. You could actually just use a set of pliers. Honestly, this is a little fancier than you actually need. You can't use a set of pliers. It makes it harder to get the correct gap. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all it's gonna take. We're gonna go ahead and throw some new spark plugs in there. So we got a little bit of anti-seize, and we'll go ahead and put this back in the hole. If you have a socket that will hold the spark plug so you don't damage it, great. If you don't, use a piece of hose and slowly put it in there and then just twist it. Once you catch threads, then you can use a socket. I don't have a torque wrench. I'm gonna do these by hand, but I will leave the torque spec if you guys need it for the spark plug. Or actually, better yet, I am gonna leave the instructions specifically from Evo that'll show you how to do this. And then from there, you can follow step by step if needed along with this video.
1 hour later!
All right guys, so when it comes to E85, most of your fuel pumps that carry E85, sometimes they're not, 85% ethanol, and you're gonna want to check them, and there's a process to checking them. Maybe I'll cover it at the end of this video, but make sure you're getting good E85 because the tune requires it. If you have less than 85% of ethanol, the vehicle may run poorly, so keep that in mind. I do want to mention, guys, that if you have the Map Tuner X, you can do a lot of stuff like data logging, checking for codes, monitoring vitals like oil pressure, boost level. There's a lot of cool things you could do with this. You can mount them. They have mounts for the X3 that you can set them up. I'm probably not going to run that, but I will keep it handy on me just in case something's going on or a code comes up, check engine light turns on, whatever it may be. I will keep it on me handy. But let's go ahead and start it. We'll get the key. Got the little rat tail going on here. And let's see what it does. First, we're going to key it on a couple times. That way we could build some pressure for the fuel system, because we did, drain it completely. There we go. She was running a little rough. Got to get all the air out of it. We'll let her warm up. She's running a little angry. Must have had air in the fuel line. It warmed up pretty good. Sounds good. So now that we're building more boost, the freaking blow-off valve works so much better because there's a lot more boost trying to escape, and this is gonna make a lot more power. We're talking about 60 horsepower. That's a third more of what it used to have. So very exciting. Let's go take it out to the desert and see how she does. Hey guys, first test. It's 5 in the morning. We're gonna go out for a ride today. I wanna make sure the car is good, so let's get some first impressions. Guys, way different. 60 horsepower is no joke. I'm gonna load it up. Watch out for the next video. We're going out on the ride. See you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. So So when you guys are running a tune like this, like I said earlier in this video, you want to make sure you're getting 85% ethanol in that mixture that you purchase from your gasoline station. So E85, that's what we're looking for. If it's less than that, it could make your engine run rough. So to check the E85, you can buy one of these tubes. I'll leave a link in the description. You fill that line to water, you fill the rest up in the line here with E85, and you shake it up, and in 5 minutes it'll give you your percentage of ethanol. It's really simple. Highly suggest you guys checking your fuel before you put it in your X3. So why run E85? It reduces detonation, which allows you to run more boost, and it gives you a lot more power. Also, it runs cooler, it runs cleaner, and overall it smells beautifully. There is some drawbacks though. You can't let E85 sit for a long time. It kind of has a little bit of a shelf life, meaning it attracts water. It's hydroscopic. It attracts water from the air, which will cause you to have some issues if you let it sit for a long time. Just keep your machine running, you know. Don't let the fuel sit for half a year. You will have issues that way. I've been running E85 on my truck for, I want to say, like 3 years now. Never had an issue. And on these X3s, lots of people run it, and you know, they love it. So also, E85 is a hell of a lot cheaper, at least here in California, than regular gasoline. I'm talking about like $2 cheaper. So peace out, stay dirty, and make sure you subscribe. Bye bye.